It's about 3:15. You want to get started?
Yeah.
Welcome everybody to the Luth Group. We've got a special guest today, somebody who I'm particularly enamored with in terms of their work. And before I introduce our guest, one of the things that occur to me when you think about the varying and different stories, many of which um, have similar themes running through them. But when you think about the stories that unfold, when you start to look at somebody's somebody's way kind of into the Luth, or when you start looking at somebody's career in Luthery, and we look at some of the nuances of the stories as you unfold somebody's career, certain themes emerge regardless of the mechanics of how somebody got into Luthery. Um, and I won't go into to a long dissertation about what those themes can be with other people. But when I start doing research about a particular luthier or have conversations with them about their careers and discover more and more the nuances of how we all kind of get into this business and develop our craft, I find that with certain people that certain words or images leap to mind for me and for different people, and as I learn more about them. And for our guest today, the the more I learned about Danny, and I've been, like I said, I've been a fan of his guitars for a long time, and I've actually had at least one in the shop to work on. And as I got to know more of Danny's story and more of him as a person, the word that keeps coming to mind for me as it relates to his story is discovery. And I don't know if that's going to be a fair characterization or not, but it's not only the discovery of the craft, but the discovery of his relationship to the craft, and as well as the discovery of not only history but his personal history in terms of a relationship that he had involving his breaking into this field before he even discovered it was the field he wanted to go into, and the path that brought him to that, and then the continuing discovery of those relationships, not only within the form of the craft, but his personal story as well. Would you say that's an unfair characterization, or would that be?
I would say keep talking.
Well, with that, I want to welcome our guest, Danny Koentopp is the correct pronunciation of your last name, I
You
take it.
got it. Yeah.
Um, so I think discovery, the word discovery tells a lot. For me, like I said, it's one of those things where I think about different luthiers, and there are certain key words that embody somebody's career. And like I said, the more I've learned about you, the more I've looked at your work, the more I've seen your guitars, and the more I got to know you a little bit better, especially in preparation for this. The word that keeps coming to mind for me is discovery, and it's not just the discovery of the craft, and it's the discovery of the history, but it's also it was a journey of discovery for you.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're onto something about saying, uh, I think like successful builders or artists, like the more, I think that word discovery has given me like self confidence in what I do. Um, it's the more you can put yourself into what you're doing, I think the more it stands out and represents you, and maybe is more successful as a, if you say a piece of art.
Hmm.
um but yeah, I mean, I was lucky and fortunate at every point in my life that I kind of was on this train headed in one direction, and maybe it stopped at all these different stops, but I feel like I picked up something along the way that I put towards would I continue doing?
Mhm.
Um, and my wife always tells me that I was really lucky to have that kind of direction and focus, and that I always knew what I wanted to do. Um, but there were many times in my life where I stepped off of the train to do something else, but I learned something, um, and always came back to like my central passion for making guitars.
Well, I think let's. I would like to take a journey back through this path of discovery, all the way back to the beginning. Um, but would I be incorrect in saying that from the beginning, it wasn't clear where that journey was headed? In other words, you see, some I've met some people who, and you just so people know, you built your first guitar at a ridiculously young age for a guitar builder. And initially it wasn't.
It was because I wanted, well, it was because I wanted to do it, and I was a very um, driven person,
Yeah.
kid. My dad totally supported me and helped out. I was just obsessed with the guitar. I was obsessed with playing the guitar. I started really young at the ages.
You started taking lessons like when you were a toddler or something, like teen,
Yeah,
seven or eight.
when I was 7, I started taking lessons with a teacher at Old Town School of Folk Music in Chicago. Um, and man, I wish I would have kept with him because he was teaching me all the basics I needed to know, like sight reading, solfege, and all this stuff. Michael
Mhm.
Row your boat ashore. But I got so bored, and it was like Sunday school, and eventually I didn't want to do it anymore. And then I saw all my kids, all my friends picking up the guitar, and this is when like alternative music was coming on. So by age 10, all my friends were playing, and it kind of gave me the kick to get back onto it.
Mhm.
So I found another teacher at Old Town. He was just teaching me all the songs that he was teaching all my friends. And again, I got bored with that because he would just be like, "What song do you want to learn today?" But that got me back on the guitar, and I started playing with my friends. Um, yeah, so I played for a long time, and uh, by the time seventh and eighth grade came, um, I come from an artistic family. My brother was also at the time was a drummer, so he was really into jazz before I was. So I was seeing uh, him bring in like jazz albums and stuff, and I would hear them from across, in the other bedroom. Like, man,
Right.
what's that? Um, but at the same time, I was painting, and I got a job in seventh and eighth grade painting. There was this program in downtown Chicago that uh, Richard Daley's wife did this summer program for kids who needed jobs out of grade school and high school. And so every day during the summer, they paid us to come downtown at Block 37 and do art, whether it was music or painting or dance or cooking.
You were painting. You were so seventh or eighth grade. You're about 13 years old. You're painting. Boy, you said something like park benches and stuff like that.
Yeah, we would paint all these benches, and they would auction them off to raise money, and then they would beautify the city with them. So like at O'Hare, during the early 90s, you could see like painted cows or painted benches. Those were all done by kids who got paid minimum wage to do art for the summer, which was amazing. While I was doing art and painting, my brother was in the Latin jazz band, and that was like uh, the diamond of the art of Gallery 37. And
Right.
that was where I set my goals. I like really wanted to do that because I was I was also a guitar player. I just didn't make the I when I did the audition, I couldn't play a major scale. It's like and I
Right.
didn't get the gig when I was 13.
Right.
But on the way, so during freshman year, though, I had this idea of I was making money painting benches, and I was like, man, like, what if I painted guitars and sold them? Because I'm making art and selling these at a high price. It's like, man, it'd be cool to paint some guitars and sell them. Um, and so all of a sudden I was like, how can I get these guitars to paint? And then my mind was like, well, maybe I make the guitars and maybe I paint them. And it was all about making money. It's nothing to do about like the joy of the craft or anything. Um, and so maybe after one of those Gallery 37 days, I went to Harold Washington Library downtown, and no joke, they had an entire row of book, like every single guitar making book, like on the highest shelf.
So this
And
is your 14, you're about 14 years old and you get it in your head that you're going to make a guitar to paint.
yeah,
And this is about what this is in the 90s, right?
yeah. Well, this would be, I think, freshman year, so that would be, yeah, 97.
Yeah, okay. So there
Um,
was no, I mean, there was no internet to speak of at the time. There was, I mean, if we waited a few years, there might be a web address with a dancing hamster or something like that. But there was no YouTube. There were no YouTube videos about people making guitars out of pencils, and so the impetus. What I'm kind of curious about is you were playing guitar and you wanted to,
there were two different things at that time, right? And then
yeah.
my brain was like, how can that's an interesting question. My brain
Because
was
when I
like,
was
how,
14 and I
yeah, how
wanted
do
to
I,
make anything, it was not a guitar.
yeah. Well, I mean, like I come, like, I don't know. I guess it's like kind of my DNA too. It's like my father was always building things and designing things. He was an
And your
architect.
father was an architect, right?
Yeah. And so I had that in me too, of the idea of being able to just, he would make like an entertainment system in a weekend, and we'd
Right.
build it outside and realize it was too big to get in the basement,
Mhm.
those kinds of stories.
Right.
Um, but so those books led me to LMI,
Right.
because those books, and some of those books in the back, they had resources, right?
Right.
Um, and I got that thick LMI binder,
Right. Yeah.
which I think I slept with. Like, I think it was like next to my bed. Um, like, I remember totally the image of Tom Rebecki's, uh, his cutaway, and his dovetail jig, and he did it. What was
Yeah,
he did, there
in
was,
the back of that binder, they had some select articles on the craft,
yeah,
depending on
there
the
was
public.
something really like eye popping in that catalog with Tom Rebecki's stuff, and I remember that just being like, whoa. Um, and the cool thing is, my dad was totally into it too. Like,
So you basically brought this idea to your dad and said, "I want to make a guitar." And
y- yeah, and I realized that like all these books that showed like so many different traditions of building a guitar in so many different ways, um, it immediately became more interesting to build and look at the world of building guitars and woodworking than it did painting.
hmm,
Like the painting meant nothing. Like, as soon as as soon as I saw that world of guitar making, the painting kind of just left, and it
right.
became no longer about making money. It just became about how much more knowledge can I, um, it's like, let's make a guitar, and my dad was right there next to me, and that was,
And this then
uh,
the first guitar you made together with your dad.
yeah, and that was junior, yeah, sophomore, maybe the summer of sophomore year of high school.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so we worked all. I mean, I honestly, I don't remember how long it took. Um, and I it was a like a Gibson. It was modeled after that double cutaway Gibson that Santana played for a while
And do I
before
have
PRS.
is this the first picture that's in the gallery of guitars you sent me? Is that
Yeah,
the guitar? Let me pull that up. Um, while we're talking about it.
just don't look at the F holes though.
It's a funky guitar. Those are great F holes. Is this the one we're talking? Is this the one we're
Oh,
talking about?
yeah, 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 yeah.
So that was your first guitar. You were like 14 or 15 years old, and
Yeah.
you built a guitar from scratch. I mean,
Yeah, we went to a neighborhood lumber yard. I mean, a great lumber, exotic lumber yard that's still in existence in Des Plaines, Illinois,
right,
and got some amazing mahogany. Um, and I spent weeks in my neighbor's basement. My neighbor, who I'll talk about later, I grew up with an amazing family next to me, and they're practically our family. And he is a product toy. He was a toy designer, and in his basement he had a mill. Um, so I just every day I came home and went down to his basement, and I carved the whole inside of that mahogany body with two axis, three axis mill, right?
right.
Or a two axis mill.
So this is this. Did you basically chambered out the body, or
Yeah, I mean, I was sitting there like a submarine worker, going back and forth, back and forth.
right,
Um, and I kind of felt bad because the amount of dust I put in his shop, you
right,
know. And then the other thing is my dad, like I would wake up and come downstairs, and my dad had been up for hours, you know, working on it. So he put as much time in it as I. I mean, we did everything together, and then if I was sleeping, he was working on it. But most of that I could probably say was shaped with the Dremel drill. Um, but we built that was our first shop. We turned a closet in the basement of my childhood house into my first workshop, which we built a bench together. Um,
yeah. And if I remember you telling the story right, when you first got the idea to build a guitar, you had to your first task was to build your shop. So
yeah, yeah. It's so funny how quickly that you don't remember that. Like, but that's a huge part of it, right? Is making the space to do it. Um, and contain it. And slowly over the years, that small closet expanded into the laundry room.
right.
And, but yeah.
That's the peg head there of that guitar.
Yeah. So my current headstock is actually like, I've really never changed it. It's and that was a napkin sketch that I did at a restaurant sitting there with my parents and my dad. Um, and it came out of a figure. It was like the whole idea of the headstock was like this dancing figure, um, like showing motion. And it's kind of very abstract, but that was the whole idea behind it.
Right. So, so coming back to here, I mean, this was your first guitar at 15. I gotta say, I've seen over the 40 years that I've been in this business, seen a lot of young people get the idea that they want to build a guitar as their first guitar. And you see a lot of, I mean, in the late 90s, Warmouth existed. What most people consider their first guitars, they buy parts of a guitar and screw them together, or they buy what's now commonly referred to as some kind of parts caster. Uh,
Sure.
if they're going to make a guitar themselves, they'll buy a hunk of something,
Well,
trace
Doug,
out.
you're not really zooming in on that photo.
Well, I can, but and it's not. It's still not. It's not as crude as you're making it out to be. This is, you got a fully
We did.
bound
I mean,
body.
I made like a wooden bridge. Like it sat on posts, but I made the bridge.
Hmm.
I just didn't make the stop tail piece. Um, yeah, I mean, I didn't really have any instructors to lead me in one direction or another. I just had this drive of like, man, I always thought that double cut Gibson was sexy,
Yeah,
and I wanted it, but
but you also wanted something with some kind of hollow chambers to it. So you,
yeah, I've always been. Let's see, at that point in time, like maybe I saw Archtops. I mean, I remember the first couple Archtops I ever saw, and the feeling I got when I saw them because I was never ever around them. And
hmm
I feel like that's a common thing for people who get obsessed with Archtop guitars because
Well,
You see, an
you were also bucking to get in the jazz band too, so that was probably a little,
true,
you
very, very true.
know,
And I did. Hey, I did get into that band, and I ended up playing in the big Latin jazz band that year.
sure.
So
So I'm going to stop sharing here for the moment. So this was your first guitar. I also remember you telling me a story that you used to did this. This became a project that you not only did with your dad, but your dad was almost bitten by the bug as much as you were. I mean, if I remember
yeah,
you telling me you had to on his, he would wake up early to go downstairs and start doing some sanding before he had to go to work, and you had to run down there to make sure he didn't
yeah, I was
take
mad.
the
I was like, Dad, yeah,
thunder. That's my
he,
guitar you're making.
yeah, totally. I was like jealous that he was up for hours. It's like, you didn't wake me up, dude.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and so that I didn't know anything about electronics at that point.
Right.
That was kind of like above my wheelhouse. So we took it to a shop that was in Andersonville, and the guys at the shop were floored too. They were like, "Oh my god, this is amazing!" The guy working there was so kind, um, and I don't even know if he charged me to like install the pickups. Um, I kind of don't think he did. Um, and regardless, a couple at this point my life becomes a blur, because like I want to say a couple days after I got the guitar back, my dad passed away.
Yeah.
um, and I think the reason why I have a hard time with like the like you were before in our conversation, you asked me all these questions about like the timeline of my life, and I literally had to like go back and like write down the years that stuff happened, because after that happened, like I had a really hard time. It was just my mom did a really good job at pointing me in the right direction and
Mhm.
just pushing me. Um, yeah, but I didn't know at that. My mom told me later on in life that he had told her that he wanted to quit his job and make guitars with me. I had never. It was way after college and well into my career that I knew that, um, which was pretty
So
awesome.
I knew he had passed away. He passed away when you were still in high school then.
Yeah, when I was a junior, I was taking a final test junior year, and the dean comes in and pulls me out in the middle of the test. Um, yeah, I mean, it was just completely devastating.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, yeah, and at that point, I was into music. I was also really into soccer.
And at that point,
And
you had built this one guitar with him. You hadn't built any more guitars after that.
yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, and so I guess playing music took more of a that was more of my focus at this
Hmm.
point. At this point, it was like soccer and music.
Right.
um, I ended up tearing my knee playing soccer, and then in junior year, and then I was like, well, I got music and I got guitar, and I found at my freshman year I started studying classical guitar with Tom Clippard at Merit Music. um, and I just ramped up my music education. I was playing in jazz bands. I was getting gigs. We
Mhm.
played at like the Museum of Science and Industry, all these galas. Um, and yeah, I decided to just focus on my music,
Right.
and that's where I went to. Um, I didn't test well. Like really, the only thing that I could do was music, and my brother was already at Rutgers studying jazz percussion, um, and so that's what I wanted to do. I applied at Northern Illinois with Fareed Hawk, at Rutgers with Vic Juris, and SUNY at Purchase was kind of my first choice because Tom Clippert, who I was studying with, his immediate teacher was Ben Verdery,
Hmm.
and he's the head at Yale. And he was supposed to teach at SUNY, so that was kind of my first place to go. However, I wanted to study jazz, so I took an audition with Fareed and Vic. And if I had gotten that spot with Vic, I totally would have ended up there. But I ended up at SUNY.
Hmm.
And at the last, like a week before, Ben decided to pull out. And I was like, what the heck? Like, this is where I'm going. But luckily, he brought in his teacher, Fred Hand, um, who changed my life.
Hmm.
And I went there for performance, for solo classical guitar performance.
Right.
I also auditioned for jazz, but the the teacher there I didn't mesh well with, and it was just a really cold introduction to it.
Right.
And I just decided to go with Fred. Um, and at this time, you all can probably see that I have terrible performance anxiety.
Well, I think also that, putting it in the context of bringing it together to back to Luthery, you went through this period, where you had this experience of building this guitar where you were bitten by this bug, and then of course the crushing experience of losing your dad, who you were doing this with, um, would send anybody's life into a tailspin. But to be a teenager at that point and having your this person who was so important not only in your life but in this thing you were doing, um, ripped from you at such an early, not only early part of your life, but early part of his life.
Yeah,
And then, you set your sights on music and you go to music school, and you struggled with music school, um, probably due to a lot of all of that, emotional whirlwind going on at the same time, not to mention, the usual emotional crap you go through when you're going to college to study music, because you have all of these competing ideas about what you expect from going to a music school. And everybody goes to music school thinking that that's where they're going to become great musicians, and everybody
yeah,
who gets there finds out that that has nothing to do with becoming a great musician. So there's the struggle about wanting to be,
yeah,
wanting to excel on your instrument, but
yeah.
suddenly doubting
It,
whether or not you've got what it
it,
takes.
and SUNY was as amazing as the faculty at SUNY were all stars, right?
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
I saw, uh, I mean, Fred was my teacher. Todd Kuhlman was the head of the jazz department.
Yep.
Um, uh,
And I knew, I mean,
John Abercrombie
I
was
knew a
was
lot of the
there.
guys who were involved over at
Yeah,
City Purchaser, Charlie
and
Blenzig.
and it was the top. It was when I went there. It was the top dance conservatory.
Yeah.
Um, so and I knew so many amazing musicians who are now at the top of their game who came out at the time. They're friends of mine who were schoolmates there. But like, so you have like all the musicians smoking weed, and you have all the dancers doing coke, and the security on campus were hard-brimmed New York State troopers. Like
Mhm.
that's who came to your door
Right.
when somebody ratted on you, right? And so what happened is like by the second year, all my friends got kicked out, and I was the only person that Fred was driving from the city to come teach. And the experiences I had with Fred, like I said, were life changing. He and maybe I should say too, like I brought guitar building books with me to campus. Like when I drove from Chicago to SUNY, like I had a box of guitar making books that I brought with.
Hmm.
Um, so that was still like going on with me. I just wasn't physically doing it. Like I had the Benedetto book. I'd watch Bob's videos. Um, but
So
sitting there with
this was still in the periphery of your consciousness at that time, that you were.
yeah, it was there, but I couldn't do anything with it. It was like the way that we grow up as kids and you to go to school for something to get a degree. It
Mhm.
was like if I could go and get a degree for guitar making at that point, I probably would have. But the next best thing was performance,
Right.
which I was horrible at. Like I'm a good guitar player, but when it came to performing in such a, a solo way, like me on stage in front of somebody who's judging me, like playing, was absolutely mortifying. And it still
Mhm.
is to me. Like my hands sweat and shake, and I couldn't perform. Um, and but Fred really helped me with that. Like one lesson, we stared at a melting New York sunset out the window and talking about how that is really what music is about, and how you could be nervous for a performance if you're not prepared, but that's on you. But other than that, like you're there as a doorway, as this passageway for other people to experience this music of other people.
Mhm.
And it's really not about you as a performer. And that mentality and him doing that and him showing me, and literally he played like, I don't know what he, like a Fernando Sor piece we were working on, right? And literally like made me cry. And I was sitting across from him playing his John Gilbert guitar, which was like witnessing God.
Mhm.
Um, and such a powerful, powerful moment of, it was an experience that I'll always remember. And in fact, later on, I did so much research on John Gilbert. Um, there was Dave Schramm, I think, posted like did all this online post because he studied him too and built guitars in his style.
Mhm.
Um, and he did all these images of like taking part of every John Gilbert guitar that he
Right.
had in his hands. And I was something about his John Gilbert's like, and because I experienced the sound and then I saw how pictures how he made that sound um, with just wood engineering.
Mhm.
Like here, John Gilbert was this like engineer from Hewlett Packard who just had this
I think he was,
right or
wasn't he
something
Pitney
like
Bowes?
that.
He was an engineer at Pitney Bowes, I think.
So yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like
I knew
he
John
did,
Gilbert for a little while. Sure. Yeah.
he did stuff that was so different,
Yeah.
and he kept experimenting and with all these things that weren't crazy. It was just like um,
He did bring an engineer's mind to the
yeah,
guitar,
and
for
I
sure.
totally I respected that. I respected um, maybe because that moment with Fred was so powerful for me. Um, and so, but then I decided to leave SUNY because I just couldn't cut it anymore.
Yeah. So you were how long were you at SUNY? How long did you get there?
I did a full year, and
Okay.
then I went back and then left. I think after the first quarter or so,
Right.
and then
Okay.
I came back to Chicago, lived with my mom,
Mhm.
um, made the basement shop even bigger.
Yeah. So at this point, you decided to go back home and you turned your sights towards the physical guitar to making.
Yeah, and at the same time, though, I was like, well,
I
I
got to go
still need
back
to,
to school for
I still
something.
need to do something.
Right.
Um, and uh, and you know, my neighbor Gary, as a product designer, who in a way is like my second father. You know, um, I mean, we had so many conversations about toys and product design, and he would
Right.
test toys on us and stuff. So I was like, man, that would be cool. You know, like the design world. It's kind
Right.
of, um, and so I went down to Columbia College in Chicago. It's on the south side um, of the Loop, and I met with the head of the design department, Kevin Henry, and we sat at a table. And I introduced myself, and he was asking questions about me and what I liked, and I'm spewing all this stuff that we're talking about. And he was just like, "This is the place for you." He he was like, "We can help you pursue." He's like, "You can go through the product design, get a bachelor's degree, and but you can cater it towards like your research into guitar building, and we can help you out and figure it out." But
Did-
through the product design department. Um,
But they
and
didn't, they didn't have anybody on staff who knew anything about a guitar.
no, no, and Kevin actually had built, I think, a couple guitars He was a woodworker,
Yeah.
and he was just as excited, I think, as I was that
Right.
there's this opportunity to use the department and use the resources that the Columbia College Design Lab has, and like let's see what we can do together.
Hmm.
Um, so that was kind of like okay, that was my new direction, um, and that led to uh, all the design classes because I had completed a lot of courses at SUNY. I was there for 3 years, maybe. But in the course of 3 years, I did, over the course of the summers that I wasn't in school, I did independent studies that focused on guitar building.
Hmm.
And so the first independent study I did was was with Kevin. Um, and I guess that was after the first year because I had already been doing like introduction to CAD CAM. Um, and I was started working on how I could use CAD to um, help with the production of making guitars. So like I made molds, right?
Hmm.
And we used it was a simple thing to do in SolidWorks then, and um, that kind of progressed. And I did other product design things. We studied fabrication and manufacturing, and in Chicago, there's so many places we visited. We went to like sand casting places, different. I think Bosch had a design lab that we got to visit there,
So
which was
you were,
amazing.
so you were through this design, the School of Design, you were kind of trying to craft your own guitar building course out of nothing
Yeah, again, without like a
with
guitar, without a master teaching me what to do.
without a roadmap too.
Yeah,
I mean, you had the
totally.
books, but you didn't have a. So you were in essence trying to create your own major, your own uh, guitar design program. Now, how many at this point had you built the next guitar after the guitars you had built with your dad?
Yeah, I think I'd built. So I think at this point I built two guitars that were pretty much based out of Bob's book, um,
Now, is that let me pull up.
by hand. Yeah, because that was in my mom's basement shop.
Is that what we're looking at here?
Yeah, that's one of them.
Okay, so this you built this one as you were enrolling in the School of Design.
Yeah, exactly. And I
So you
used, yeah,
and you used the Benedetto book as your kind of as
as how do I bend wood? How do I? And of course, nobody showed me. It was like, you do it and you learn.
yeah.
But yeah, like that's Bob's outline, right? Those are my
Mhm.
those were F holes I came up with. So I did of that, and I also did a cutaway. Um, and I used this crazy veneer wood. I don't know if I have a picture of that.
Is that this?
Oh, there you go. Yeah, on the back there's this center strip of wood that was made out of this. My neighbor, this is getting off the path a little bit, but my neighbor ran a high-end wood manufacturing carpentry business that did installations for banks and theaters and that kind of thing in Chicago. And he worked with his Italian veneer company that sliced patterned woods,
Hmm.
um, and I was able to. Unfortunately, I don't have pictures of the back of those, but
So
I
what
incorporated
I'm looking at here,
my first two Archtops ever made.
okay, how many guitars was that after this?
Um, Maybe there might have been an electric and a bass before those. I don't remember if those were before or after. So either three or four or two and three.
So we got from here to here in just a few guitars.
Yeah.
Man, I gotta tell you, that's for somebody who's self self guided, um, that's pretty dramatic.
Thanks.
You know. So so you're now in. Let me pause that there. Um, you're now at the School of Design, and you're figuring out your path. Um, to try to create some school program out of something they don't actually teach.
Yeah.
You have the resources of the school available to you, and at this point, you're and I want to follow this notion of discovery, because here you are now after taking a detour into trying to go into music performance, finding out um, painfully that it wasn't for you, and having to face that uh,
I
stress.
loved, and I continue to love playing music. I just couldn't do it as a solo performer.
Right, which also means you're
Right?
also
Like I was,
facing
yeah, I was
your
doing gigs. I was doing gigs with like a flute player
yeah.
as a classical guitar player. Um, and at this point, I had a concert level guitar because when I showed up to Fred, I think I had an Alvarez, and he's like,
Right.
"Dude, I can't teach you on this." So I bought this amazing guitar from Fred.
Hmm.
Um, and again, it was like, holy cow, this guitar like is this Italian a professional classical guitar, which I've never up until then. Like Tom, my teacher had a Doug Chang, which was an amazing classical guitar, and I got to play Ben Very Smallman. So the idea of like these amazing instruments and the possibilities of what you can do was also like itching, right? Like they definitely leveled up my because up until that, I had a Telecaster, the guitar I made for me.
Hmm.
My dad, when I was 17, bought me a G&L Legacy, which I still have, which I love.
Hmm.
Um, but I never really experienced what a concert level instrument could do, and how it could, you know, uh, yeah, affect your emotions, maybe.
Sure, yeah, yeah, and like I said, you're now you would face the notion that maybe a career in performing is not going to be your path, and you go back to Chicago, and now you're back on this journey of discovery, and you're trying to figure out a program in school in the School of Design having to do with guitar building and focusing your efforts on that. And I think it would be fair to say also rediscovering the relationship you had with your dad previous to him passing away and trying to get
Yeah.
back that connection to
May,
building.
and I think subconsciously that was going on. I just wasn't aware of it.
Right.
Um, it was, I mean, I feel like my whole 20s, I was in this place of darkness and anger,
Hmm.
and maybe guitar making was my central focus. That was like my therapy and like my artistic brain
Yeah,
that
maybe that's
gave
that
me,
place you found some solace from that darkness, I think, too, possibly.
yeah. Um, so, so I had to do a thesis project for at Columbia, which started my junior, my last 2 years.
Mhm.
My second to last year was all research,
Right.
and then the last year was implementation. Um, and coincidentally, I had a cousin who was a salesperson at Darden and Hirsch um, violins, and this was a long time ago. He kept saying, because he knew I was into guitar making, he's like,
Hmm.
"You gotta come in and meet Michael. You gotta come in and meet Michael." And I never thought anything of it. Um,
Michael, what's the last name?
Darnton.
Darnton, yes.
Um, and what's amazing about Chicago, one of the things that's amazing about Chicago is that it's still a central hub for violin making.
Hmm.
In fact, there's a dozen or so violin makers who work downtown amongst the high rises in downtown Chicago. Um, if you look at an old photo of like the turn of the century, of like 20th century, of like uh, down State Street, or it's all music buildings,
Hmm.
like Wurlitzer. It's as far as the picture goes, it's all music buildings,
Hmm.
um, and this is like what's left of it. You have the Bain Fushi that is in charge of the Stradivarian Society. Um, uh, um, Kenneth uh, Warner. God, edit that out.
No, it's fine. So,
uh,
so you're
but
now in your junior year, because I want to bring the focus back to you. Um, Now at this point, you're working out your major as a guitar building major in the School of Design, and you take another detour into this cul-de-sac into the violin world, which seems counterintuitive, but it was
totally,
what was
totally.
available to you at the time. You have this relative who's a salesperson at what was
He, yeah, Darnton and Hirsch
Darton and
fine
Hers.
violins.
Hmm.
So, in order for me to start my research, we needed to identify an advisor,
Hmm.
somebody who would that we could go to and help and push us along the way, and a mentor. And I was like, well, Michael's like 3 blocks away, and
And you had a
uh,
connection, so
and I
why
had a
not?
connection, yeah.
Yeah.
And my first experience, I go in there and he's sharing the space. So at this point, Michael had his own shop, and he's sharing it with um, another violin maker and a bow maker,
Right.
and then the violin company as a whole was like a couple of floors up. So the shop was separate. Michael had his own space.
Right.
So I go in there, and it's this dark little old Chicago um, like footprint of a building. And Michael's shop is this tiny little, maybe 6 feet wide by 20 feet long.
Yeah.
Um, and he's just got one lamp on because after dark in the wintertime, like everything's dark. Everybody, the city is dark, and he's just got one lamp on, and he's sitting there, carving a bridge. And that moment was like sitting with Fred. It was like this, oh my God, like I, I, I like that's what I want to do.
Right.
And and it took over. It was like I said, I think in that one meeting, I said, "Is there anything I can do, or like, can you show me?" Um, and he's like, "Well," and he handed me a violin, a post, and he showed me. He cut a post in like 30 seconds, and it fit perfect.
Right.
And and he showed me how to do it. He gave me his knife, um, and just hold. I remember just holding his knife, his
Yeah.
soundpost knife, was like, can I swear?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like fuck. Um, and then to see him do it so easily with like squeezing the plates, the ribs, and sliding it in, locking it in, like done. And then he's like, feel it, see how it's like locked in there. And he's like, so like your turn. Um, and maybe I did it in an hour or so. I sat out because I couldn't fit in his shop. There was a little table outside of his shop, so I did it out there. I brought it back, and he's like, nice. He's like, come back tomorrow. He's like one of those things, right?
Right.
Um, yeah. And so I don't know if I asked him to be my advisor at that point. I think I was just so enthralled in meeting him and
Right.
seeing that like, I hate to use the word romantic, but it was really like this aha moment of, man, I want to do that. Up till then, I really hadn't worked with hand tools. I think
Right.
my I think the planes that I had bought, I think my irons were upside down. I was like, right? Like, why aren't these working? Um, like I maybe made those two archtops with like really primitive tools.
Right.
And so he's such out of the world of the old school world of um, uh, on the contrary, though, on the other side of the wall behind him were like computer boards of like things that he was messing around with. So he also is totally into computers and technology.
Right.
He was a photographer before he was a violin maker. In fact, he was a guitar maker, living in Ann Arbor, Michigan, before violin making, and he decided there was no money in guitar making, so
Hmm.
he started making violins. Um, and yeah, so he became my advisor for my thesis. And my thesis was essentially, I was very naive at this point. Um, it, I had a lot of experience under me, but in terms of like what's out there in the guitar world, like when I look at it now, my thesis was like, how do I how do I make an electric guitar better? That
Right.
was kind of like a very broad, um, wasn't a very specific thing. But I did it in such a way that I was like, well, how can I um, combine this world of fine craftsmanship in the violin world with something like the electric guitar? Um, and it was basically like, okay, can you figure out a problem and then present a solution and solve it?
Hmm.
Um, so I don't know if I identified a problem, but I definitely came up with a design um, that was more or less like going through the process of a design problem. But I ended up in the same process, like figuring out a way to map, like how can I relate the Archtop guitar to the violin world? Like how can I map and figure out the geometry of how an Archtop would be conceived of if it came with the idea of the violin world,
And
because that's
this you were doing, that was your schoolwork
yeah.
related to your thesis, but like I said, I want to bring the focus back to you. You started, he was not just an advisor to your schoolwork, you started apprenticing in his shop. And
Yeah,
you
so
started,
every day I went there, and um, at that point they had a huge rental supply,
right.
inventory. So that was like my cutting teeth, was just going in there and doing setups on these instruments that either came in and needed work, or they were brand new from wherever they came in off the container. Um,
And this is what now, like 2004, 2003, somewhere in there. You
yeah,
went to
2000,
school.
yeah, 2003 maybe.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, and then this is where things get a little foggy for me.
But I think you said you started apprenticing with him and working in, under his tutelage.
Yeah, and since then, there was a lot of time I would spend it. It wasn't just after school. There might have been where I had like one class in a day, like in the morning, and then I'd go over there.
Yeah.
Over the course of like 2004 to 2008, I built out three shops for Michael and Darton and Hirsch because we moved to different places.
Yeah, you did like
Um,
a 1 year, from what I remember, you did like a 1 year apprenticeship, and then they just hired you outright, and you worked there until like 2009 or something like that.
yeah, I mean, he was putting really important projects on my desk, um, and I was gaining confidence in the work that I was doing. Um, and it was all restoration work on instruments that they came in and they were valuable, but they either came in from another shop because they didn't sell,
Hmm.
or they were instruments that were in their own inventory that they didn't sell because they didn't sound good.
Hmm.
They were they're important instruments, but um, they needed work. So my job was to open them up and to ask Michael what to do. He would show me, and after a while, it became the system that I knew what to look for,
Hmm.
things to adjust, and we would do the adjustments, put everything back together, do a complete setup. And the beauty is those instruments would sell. Um, so it was our job to make uh, the salespeople successful in a way. Um, yeah, so I loved that job. I became like the cello guy. Like I just loved working on cellos because I could just like get my head like inside an
Yeah.
open cello.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I cut my hands so much on dried hide glue. um, but yeah, eventually, there are amazing instruments that came through. Like at one point, we had four Strads in the shop,
Hmm.
and we just sat in a circle talking about the four, and hearing them, hearing these amazing instruments. Again, it was like one of those experiences where like you hear somebody playing an instrument that's 500-600 years old, and like the walls vibrate. It's
Yeah.
like it's an experience. Um, and I knew how to. I was able to, on certain instruments, an instrument would come in and it would sound like shit, and then we would do our thing. We would call it liposuction, you know. And I guess a lot of things were just like those instruments in general. They were like uneven. There were lumps. They were made very quickly, but they were really old.
Right.
Um, so we did our jobs, and then to hear the result of them afterward was a very rewarding
Right.
experience.
Now
Um,
that whole period of time while you were apprenticing with him, were you still building guitars at that point, or did that take a pause again?
it took a pause, and I remember as the stuff started picking up with Michael that I think I voiced this to my mom. I was really worried that that was done,
Yeah.
because this was really a bug that I was really all, and to this day I almost wish that I was still doing it. I still wish that I was studying with Michael, and
Hmm.
in a way I think that's an inspiration that I have currently,
Hmm.
is making instruments that I like. I see myself presenting to Michael, um, in the same world of, uh, but it's a totally different world, and so that's a different conversation.
But
Um,
it's a totally different world career wise, and of course from a craft perspective, that period of time now at 2009 or so when you decided to go back to guitars, you brought all of that in tow with you, and you can see it.
yeah, yeah, and Michael helped me because at the same time I was figuring out, and call it coincidence maybe, like Michael was uncovering things. Everybody says, like, what's the secret sauce about all this stuff? And Michael was quietly figuring out all these things in his head, like what he thought, mapping out things and figuring out, just seeing all these reoccurring relationships. I mean, we had amazing violins come in that, were museum pieces. Like we had an old Amati, I think, that followed us with. In fact, there's a video that he does a laser scan
Hmm.
of that Amati. Um,
I think I can
it
pull that up.
Yeah. So at the same time that I was going through the guitar stuff and figuring out, okay, like, um, part of my work was how do I map out the top and back plates in a way that's similar to how you would do it on a violin. And it's very, very tricky. And in fact, like, I I can still say, like, I haven't really figured it out because it's too complex. Um, but that's kind of where I was going at Columbia.
So I think here is what you were referring to, looking at.
Yeah. So this is I don't know what year it is. Maybe it's from 15 something. I could be completely wrong about that. Um, but he's doing a laser scan, and basically every one of those cross sections is a golden ratio curve,
Hmm.
um, at every single point. And there's a little differences where it gets to the corners where it does something a little tricky. There, showing you like how, like, he wanted to highlight that central C-bout arch. Um, and that has a lot to do with, where where I moved from and where I currently am, and how I build.
Hmm.
Um, because it gave me a method, it gave me a sense of order, it gave me a sense of, uh, uh, um, a solid foundation of something that I there you go. So
Yeah.
you can see they're called cycloid curves. Um, and they're exactly the only deformations there are from age. Like on there where your mouse is on the right side, you can see like a deformation, but that's just
Right.
because of the sound post over a couple hundred years.
Right.
Um, but these guys knew, like, what they did had purpose. It was like they weren't just like carving an arch. Um, like they were designers, right? Like
Right.
they were product designers. There you go.
Yeah.
Um,
So
And
while you're in this apprenticeship and your mind is wandering back to, this desire to go back to building guitars, all of this is now informing your ideas about what's going to happen when you go back,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
which
But at the same
which is
time,
which is evident right here.
yeah, maybe that's not a great example.
But this is where
Yeah,
that is
yeah,
starting to come into play.
yeah. And the whole idea, I mean, cycloids, you can manipulate them in any way you want to. The beauty of it is the language of the whole, because when you approach it, I feel like the magic is when you approach something like that, you're looking at it from like this global level of the whole plate working together in a very uniform and specific way.
Hmm.
That's as uniform as possible, right? Like it
Right.
speaks together. Um, and yeah, that's kind of like the nuts and bolts of my approach um, to doing it. So I had to continue my thesis and make a. The cool thing is that Columbia paid for all my materials,
Oh, that's good.
right? Yeah. Um, and then as soon as I graduated, I kept working with Michael. And when the market crashed in 2008,
Hmm.
um, they could no longer afford to keep the shop together.
Right.
And so I put every unemployment check back into I was like, all right, here we go. Um, and that was kind of the start of my business.
I'm going to pause that there because we're going to come back and talk about that later. Um, so yeah, so you're at this point, your employment with them ends in 2009. Your schooling is long over at that point because you weren't in school for 5, 6 years. Um, and so, the 2008 housing crash happens and you're off on your own, and it's now you're
I I just finished building this glorious shop for them.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also working with Michael. So my other job there was I was in charge of the archives.
Hmm.
Um, they had thousands and thousands of images of instruments that they've seen, and every instrument that came in, Michael photographed and labeled. My job was to organize them, but also to do all of the photo editing,
Hmm.
because a lot of times when you're taking photos, like it's very unrealistic of how they appear.
Hmm.
So when I didn't have a job at the bench, I was sitting in front of a computer just photo editing violins
Mm.
and cellos and organizing them into different schools of where they came from.
Right.
Um, and that I learned a ton from doing that. Um,
The here we go. So is this where this comes in? At that point, 2000, is this 2009 or was that prior to that?
that was a so I finished my classes at the end of my thesis, and I was like, I'm gonna still milk this and do another independent study
Right.
because they were paying for my materials and I could use the shop.
Hmm.
Um, and that was an instrument that I got a design patent for my thesis project. And
For this.
y- yeah, um, and I got it because there was this amazing guy there who was working with his law class, and he was like, "Can we use your project as our class project?"
Yeah.
They didn't finish it, but then afterwards, I was like, well, like let's. He put it through, and it passed, so it was um, it was granted. But basically, it's like a neck through Archtop, where it takes all of the tension off of the only tension on the guitar is through the bridge.
Mm.
Um, the strings don't really. I've seen there's another guitar out there that a guy does, but I, I'm like I'm not sending a cease and desist
Right.
letter, like whatever. It was cool. It was a cool thing to do, and it worked really well until it didn't. Um, I stain that guitar with coffee, which is kind of cool. That brown one.
This is where are we here?
This was the first guitar I did after being laid off. I did two.
Okay.
This was one of two.
So
Um,
this is now the beginning of your independency um,
yeah.
and your business.
Yes. Hmm.
And as we move forward here, we're going to be looking at some of these guitars. You can even start to see some of the influence from being in the violin world um, as we move forward here.
My first ever sunburst.
Yeah, but you can see just the size of that bridge is the influence of the violin world on you. What's going on here, by the way?
I mean, that was my love and my I still to this day I have a love of I mean the guitar that I played the most is an nylon string guitar and um that was a classical guitar I made for uh was that the one I made for Roddy Elias? I I don't remember. But it was that was yeah, that was the first classical guitar I made. Very traditional with a couple of like open struts on the inside that were not so traditional. Um,
Did you go with an integrated neck on this, like a traditional
no, that's a
guitar?
dovetail. I was like,
Okay.
I'm going. I'm. I was good, like like I'm was with the violin world now. I was like, I'm gonna set this neck.
So this um gorgeous.
Thanks, man.
What's going on here?
I had a client who came to me. He was like, I want an electric guitar. I was like, cool. Hire me.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my first electric guitar. I've always loved Telecasters to this day.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's the first one.
Now we start to see some real um influence that from spending so much time in Michael's shop on your guitar building. Um, most obviously, most notably at the bridge.
Yeah,
And that's
that's that's basically an old Baroque Strad bridge
mhm,
that I made a print, skewed it, scaled it, and made it fit, and then carved it. And I've changed my one of the beauty. There's so many beauties about violin making and cello making, but the bridge work on those instruments is so specific.
mhm,
You can make a violin change completely by the way you carve the bridge or the style of bridge you carve.
mhm,
And so that's kind of where I went with these bridges. This bridge sounded great and it worked, but over the years, I've redesigned it in a way that I I wanted to move the sound in a different way.
mhm.
Um, because that's just whatever.
That's what.
I was gonna say it's a very stiff bridge.
Okay. So we got some more telecasters here.
Yeah, that first one I made for that was Matt Warnock's like first Telecaster that I made for him.
Right.
That went to a. So these were all going out to really great players. Like this
So,
went
and
to
this
this.
this thing fascinates me too because your passion for the archtop guitar, you've certainly become very well known as an archtop builder. But along the way, you were not sitting still for purity's sake. This
Yeah,
was
no, I was cranking then.
we
And the electrics kind of incorporate my thesis idea in a way because they look like Telecasters, but they're far from it in the construction. Um,
tell me how they're different.
the neck is set all the
Okay.
way through the body. The body is mostly hollow,
Okay.
so it's the neck is set at the heel and then it's set again at the bridge. So the neck floats through like the hollow chamber.
Okay.
and then the top is capped on top of it.
Okay. So this is
Um,
this is going all the way down to here.
yeah,
Okay. Again, more influence from the violin world.
yeah. And so this guitar, this and that, the last couple, I had moved it to a different shop, another basement shop, but a different place I was living.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that is much larger. I had like a pretty decent spray setup. Um, it was great spraying in the winter of Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
So dry.
Yeah.
That was what I call. So I name all my guitars after Chicago, and the Blue Line was where the house that I lived at, which was right off the Blue Line. That I took the Blue Line train is what I took to Darton and Hirsch every day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that Blue Line I made for Roddy Elias, great Canadian player. I think Michael Darton took that picture. We used to balance instruments on jars.
Right.
And like we would balance like $1 million instruments on jars.
This is
And then
the
I was like, Michael, I'll hold my guitar.
So, and then you decided to make a Silmer?
Yeah, so I opened up a shop space with a guy who ran um, gypsy jazz guitar store,
Okay.
and I had a space in the back, which was really awesome. I met some amazing people and brought that world into my world. It's very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was around some amazing old gypsy jazz guitars. This was a guitar, an old Favino came in, and I loved it so much that the owner of the shop wanted me to copy it. Um, so that was my take on an old Favino. I I really wish I knew where that guitar is now.
Really?
Yeah, I bet it sounds good. This was an Amati. So I have the Chicagoan, the Blue Line, and then my Amati, which is my another 17-inch guitar I do, but is more as you can see, it's kind of has the reflection of my experience on the violin world.
Yeah, we can
Um,
see again the
and you can
violin
see,
part.
I don't. That's not a great shot. I might have other bridge shots, but um,
And these are just in the order of that you had sent them to me, and I didn't resort them.
yeah, yeah. So this one might have been the first one in my LA shop, which is really funny because it's like a Chicago guitar.
Yeah.
um, the client wanted me to design an inlay that represented Chicago. Um, there it is. So there was no image, and this was really close to home, and I really wanted to do it justice, not only because he didn't really care about the price tag, um, but it's like Chicago architecture, and then how can I use the fingerboard as my canvas. And I was like, well, the best shot of Chicago is out in a boat looking
Right.
into the skyline of Chicago, but I couldn't find an image. So I took all these photographs and put them together. And I made this image that accurately depicts every single building in the Chicago skyline.
Oh, wow.
Um, and I sent it to Larry Robinson, and he did the amazing inlay.
Wow, that's incredible.
I think I got it. I don't. He sent me the number of pieces in there, and it's like, damn, dude.
Yeah. And I got to tell you something, I just want to thank you as a guitar player that somebody finally decided to do an inlay on a guitar. Um, Let me stop sharing. Do an inlay on a guitar fingerboard this way instead of this way. You know,
Yeah, because that's the way it's always going to be
that's
seen.
the way the guitar is going to spend its life this way. Everybody who designs inlays so they look pretty this way is forgetting that they're going to spend their whole life this way.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
for
Well,
me, I really appreciated seeing that in landscape there.
what came out amazing
Hmm.
is that the Sears Tower, which I'll always call it the Sears Tower, um, is right at the 12th fret.
Oh, is it?
Like,
Let me see.
yeah,
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like that was a total happy accident.
That's perfect. Yeah, that's fantastic. And this is the back of the peg head on that guitar.
Yeah, yeah. He like really, and I was, and you know what? This was right before the Cubs won the World Series,
Hmm.
and I was like, dude, like this broke the curse. The gold Cubs win on the back of the headstock broke the Cubs curse.
Hmm. Is this more of that guitar?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not that guitar. That's moving ahead. So I also noticed that there's a desire to not sit still in terms of your design. Like almost every guitar is.
At this point, so these are now my LA shop. So I moved. Um, I met my wife in 2007. I hope that's
Hmm.
right, or she's gonna kill me. We got married in 2011.
Hmm.
We moved out to LA in 2013, and the time I built my shop out here, and there was a significant amount of time where I couldn't work, physically work.
Hmm.
Um, but I knew that I wasn't really happy with my designs up to this point, and so my break was like this. Okay, I'm going to use this time to take everything back to the drawing board.
Hmm.
Um, and that's what I did. I changed my outline um, to an outline that really kind of hits home for me. Um, there's, you know, Jimmy D'Acquisto was always like, he's still, like the pinnacle builder. And more so for me as a designer, like I think his design aesthetic hits me harder than I don't have an experience with a lot of sound of his guitars. I mean, I've played a few.
Yeah.
Um, but man, he was such a brilliant designer. Like he understood balance and form and line. His eye for line work. Uh, I think I told you before. It's like he could have been a car designer or a
Right.
boat designer and made the most amazing, um, drooling work.
Is this what you're talking about here?
Yeah,
This-
yeah. So I just love that outline so much. Um, I didn't want to copy it, but I wanted to figure out. This was me just like messing with things. Um,
Which I
uh,
noticed also, by the way, also is what you're wearing.
oh yeah,
I just happened to notice that that's on your shirt.
yeah.
So, so what was the concept here? You were
Well,
dealing with.
I mean, this goes back. I mean, so this goes back to Michael. One point, he had a really old like pre-war Martin, um, and he was making a copy of it, and instead of just tracing, he did everything from the ground up too. Um, and he redid the outline and showed how Martin had made the outline with these circles. Um, but that's also how the golden violins were made,
Mhm.
through all these relating circles um, uh, that connect in very important places. Um, so this was me playing around with an outline that I loved, and then how can I recreate it in a way that's organized and made from something um, that spoke all together. Like for instance, all those circles are multiples of 8. I think it only shows of 8 inches.
Mhm.
Um, the cutaway is a little bit of a cheat. I think that central sharp circle there, I think, is a 3-inch circle.
Mhm.
Um, but that was like, did Jimmy do this? Right? Like,
Yeah.
did he make the outline like that? I probably because, but the interesting thing is with his guitars, there's these bumps here and there,
Mhm.
which add to his. I think they add this unique style to his outline. Like for instance, there's a bump on the top of the horn, which I really really love,
Mhm.
and I do that too. I think that gives like the horn some attitude, um, but it also does something to your eye. Like when you see an outline of an instrument that's made this way, your brain doesn't really know, but it's your eye, it gets drawn to it,
Mhm.
because there's order to it.
Right.
Um, so so this is all work I did when I couldn't work, um, and then I incorporated that same, uh, call it like numeric relationship, to my archings.
Right.
So at this point, it's like, how can I relate everything from the very beginning? Um,
And you're starting to see some of that influence in all of these designs.
yeah,
Not that one.
no, no, not that one.
But back in here, and I notice other things like your bridges seem to be getting bigger in their footprint.
Yeah, yeah. My F hole placements are changing. I tried for the longest time to come up with an F hole placement that had like the way that violin F holes are placed in this, uh, golden mathematical way.
Mhm.
Um, it didn't work. You know, there's so many things that, okay, like this is a guitar and that's a violin.
Right.
Um, but
And that one, I think, yeah,
and I love doing, like, I mean, I love doing all these guitars, right? I love changing. I love doing the Amati because it pulls
sure.
me back into the knife work. Um, Doing things that are more modern.
And
Uh,
you're doing mostly, for somebody who when you crafted your um major in school, you were doing a lot of CAD work, but you're doing most of your building by hand, right?
I am. I mean, I'm using CAD and CAM as a huge tool for me.
From a
I feel,
design standpoint.
yeah. I mean, I feel like the CAD and CAM is a tool as far as you can push it, and it's only your ability as a designer, um, to control it and take it where you want to go.
Hmm.
You know, to have it. You know, it's important that you lead it and not it lead you.
Right.
Uh,
So here
but
we can see here that, that influence of being in Michael's shops just won't let go. It's all there, you know?
yeah,
And of
and
course,
so that's like a so that was like my evolution of a bridge. I kind of was like, well, that this bridge looks and has more influence of a cello bridge in its design as opposed to that other Baroque style bridge.
hmm,
This bridge has a lot more. It's the same footprint, but it has so much more flexibility in it in the way that it's carved and shaped.
hmm,
Um, I I always feel like a bridge needs to be stiff, but it also needs to be very flexible.
right,
Um, and so many people are afraid of this bridge because they see it as this delicate thing. But man, that bridge is so stable. Like it, it's far more stable than a bridge that's on two metal posts.
sure. Oh yeah, well, absolutely. Now, how do you deal with the adjustability factor?
Um, I usually make two bridges.
Hmm.
So I do a bridge that's perfect, and then I cut a bridge that's taller.
Okay.
Um, and you know, the guitars do change, and that's a conversation I have with the clients about keeping the guitars in a consistent place.
Hmm.
Um, but so far, it hasn't been an issue. I also make an adjustable bridge for people who can't get the instruments back to me. You know,
Right.
I'll send them an ebony bridge too. Um, yeah, and I think for me, one of the interesting things that uh, I um, gain confidence in is like how the more me that I keep my instruments, I feel that, like we said earlier, like the more confidence I have. But a lot of that is varnish, like how like like so many guitars are finished in lacquer, and I just became more and more agitated with lacquer,
Mhm.
not because of the ease of use or anything, but like what it did to my work underneath, like sonically.
So
Uh,
what are you finishing your guitars currently in?
right now I'm using like my clear coat is Epiphane's oil varnish.
Okay.
Um, and it's more work and it's tricky, but the result right out the box is like for me it everything that I worked for before comes out even better after I apply my varnish. Whereas lacquer, there's a much more longer period of time where and you're waiting for your sound to come back. Um, that I find, but it is a pain in the ass. It also allows me to do more, like the oil varnish. For me, it allows me to have more fun underneath it because there's more things I can do in an artistic way with color and pigments um, that I couldn't do underneath lacquer.
Well, so what are you using? How are you dealing with applying those colors and the pigments?
Well, I can use oils. You know, oils open up so many different doors uh, that you can use,
Right.
from natural pigments to tube pigments to um, linseed oil to, and again, it kind of brings me back to like my roots of studying with Michael. It kind of, I don't know, makes my brain a little happier.
Right. So that the influence of the violin world again, outside of just bridges and carving tops and stuff like that, in your choices of finish are also, evident. There's, like you said,
Yeah,
the arch in that guitar is not a typical archtop
it
arch.
looks like the video of the Amati that Michael did.
That's yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, and more, I feel like I'm pushing. Like I want to do less in the world of varnish.
Right.
I want to showcase more of like an instrument that you're not afraid to pick up
Right.
yet. You know, like uh, I'm getting more and more away from like the super glossy, shiny thing, and but I still do lacquer. If somebody wants it.
Mhm.
Like this guitar was lacquer. Um, that one too, I think.
We're gonna Tilly.
So yeah, this is a guitar where I was, excuse me, experimenting with like a different, you know, a different varnish look. If you go to the, is it this? This may not be that guitar actually. No, never mind. But there are a lot of things that I'm experimenting on. Like you're
Right.
seeing all these photos,
Yeah.
but as I'm looking at them, like this is a guitar that I experimented on a lot in terms of like you can't see a lot of the varnish, but things I was messing around with the wood,
Hmm.
um, and things I'd never done before.
Yeah.
And sometimes I put myself in a corner because I like to experiment because I feel like I'm still trying to reach a procedure that I really love. Um, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Well, that's, I think, part of the whole process of this journey of discovery, that you're not satisfied with just, sticking to a formula or
Well,
following some.
that's why I think that right there is the reason why I love the Archtop as an instrument and as a woodworker, because it gives me the freedom and especially the violin world, it gives me more freedom to not stick to the rules
Hmm.
and be myself in a way.
And you can
Um,
see the even, as we progress through here, you can even see how much further you're pushing past, where your inspirations began, because even when you kind of reassessed where you wanted to be with guitars and you fell in love with that symmetry of the acquisto, you can even see here how that you leaving that behind to be, and having your experience of the influence of the violin world really kind of push your envelope here,
Thanks.
and there's another case in point where it just won't let go.
I don't know. I mean, they're all. I said this in our talk earlier. It's like the end result for me is that I always want to make an instrument that's emotional,
Hmm.
and it's emotional for me. But I think when it leaves here, it has a whole nother life.
Right.
But an instrument that becomes emotional, I think, is successful.
Yeah.
It changes. I've had like Bobby Broom's guitar. Um, After I made it, um, he had an accident with it, and he brought it back here. And I swear, when I opened the case and played it,
Hmm.
it sounded like Bobby Broom. I was like, it. It was this really cool experience.
Right. And he's an amazing player. Um, he's fantastic. Um,
I didn't mean to name drop him.
no, 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 he's a
That
great
was-
player. He's a fantastic player. And there's almost nothing he can do wrong. He's a great musician, and
yeah,
he's a real um intuitive player. You
and
know,
he plays the crap out of that guitar. It's so great. It's
sure,
so great.
yeah. But so before we go into, because we've been chit chatting about guitars and you for a little while now, and we're going to do a shop tour. So during the whole course of this path of you discovering your design sense, you're also um, evaluating the build process of the guitar. Because a lot of people learn how to build a guitar. That's the way they build a guitar. These are the jigs. This is the molds. They do this before this before, and I don't mean to sell it short, because building a guitar is no small task. It's 1,000 arduous tasks strung together one after the other. Um, but in a lot of ways, building a guitar is like building a guitar-shaped birdhouse, where if you do everything right, one step in front of the other, and you have your methodology together, at the end of that line, you have a guitar-shaped object that's a pretty good guitar-shaped object.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things that I see you do that, when I see the posted on Instagram, or when I see a video of it somewhere or something like that, I just scratch my head and go, where'd that come from? Like, and I think one of the things, what I'm talking about. Um, Explain, I guess I'll look here. And this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Um, Explain this to me.
This was a um this was me spending, how many days and hours like over a hot pipe. And uh, although the hot pipe bending is still super fun,
Right.
um and it's a game,
Yeah.
it's like, how do I make this straight piece of wood fit this curved line?
Yeah. So
And
you're
I
bending your sides
and
over a pipe.
yeah, I mean, that's how I've have always been doing it. The cutaway bender, like I have a Fox bender, a Fox style bender, that I made a cutaway jig for that helped support the tension of a cutaway.
Hmm.
It quasi worked. Um, the so sitting over a hot pipe and bending a piece of wood over it, my mind was like, man, I wish the pipe was the shape that I was trying to bend to. It would be a whole lot easier if like that were the case. Um, and then I was like, I thought about it, went to bed, woke up, bending more wood, thinking about it. It's like, okay, well, how could I make a form that was the shape I wanted to bend to? Maybe I could use the silicone heating blankets. So like I started messing around on the computer. And this was like, my product design brain kicking in, like, here's a problem. And the design of this was purely like, will it work? Like that was my reward
Right.
of, I wasn't expecting it to work, to be honest with you. Um, so
Because this didn't exist. This isn't like you borrowed this from somebody. This
no,
didn't
this,
exist.
and let me tell you, like, oh my God, it's just such a dream to use. It's, it has its hiccups, but that's because of like the nature of a silicone heating blanket.
Right.
Um, so the first iteration of this design, I made it and it was flat because I was like thinking of it as a hot pipe, right?
Right.
And it was like, well, this isn't gonna work because it was everything was just the slats and the heating blankets were like everywhere and it was really hard to manage.
Yeah.
And then I was like, it needs to be on the wall so that everything can hang out of the way, right? And then I
So
realized,
it's just so people who don't may not know what we're looking at. This is something you call the gravity bender.
yeah, which I named after I figured out the next couple steps. It's a new way that I bend my sides in a really like bulletproof method.
Right.
Um, and so it never really, I didn't mount it on the wall yet, but in the beginning, um, I put it on the wall and then I realized that if, because I was trying to move the blankets by myself and I was like, man, if it spun and if it rotated, it would, it would do it naturally. It would just like follow the curves of the outline. Um, and
Would
then
bend the sides for you.
Yeah, exactly. And then the whole problem with bending a cutaway is support. Like if you don't support the piece of wood, um, like that's when you run into issues. Um, so hanging it on the wall, I realized that I could always keep the slats under tension, and I do that by hanging these old cast iron window sash weights. So that's about there's like 6, 7 pound weights on there.
Right.
The first time I did it, I hung the weights and the whole thing fell off the wall. Right, like the two toggle clamps couldn't hold all the weight. Um, yeah. So and I never like using a lot of moisture when I'm bending wood. I feel like if you use too much moisture, for me, I mean everybody's different and has have their own techniques, but for me, moisture, I've always run into issues when I oversaturate a piece of wood and try to bend a crazy curve into it.
What
Um,
kind of issues would you run into when you by
like with
oversaturating?
flame maple, I should be more specific because like the flame sometimes is so dense that it cuts right through and it just like you know your piece of wood just falls apart.
By
Um,
the way, is the background noise in the video coming through? I can't tell.
I don't hear anything,
You see
but
if
we don't really. It's probably just noise.
that's fine. I just didn't want it.
Um,
So I'll just let it continue. But continue, yeah. So you run into issues with the maple and the moisture.
yeah, so this also allows me to not because the more pressure that I think that you support the wood with, the less moisture you need, right? The less space. There's no room for the wood to break because it's being supported.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so really, I just put two wet pieces of brown paper in there. I don't even wet the wood really.
Mm.
Um, and I hang all the weights on the bottom there. And I call it, that's kind of why I call it the gravity bender because it's the weight of the weights and the rotation that does the bending. And all you're doing, um, is making everything, as long as it's against that white backer board,
Hmm.
that's another beauty of it is the Fox bender. A lot of times, if you don't have positive stops, you end up with a perfectly bent side that's a little twisted.
Well, it's a little skewed because
Yeah,
it's no longer square to the
yeah, it was always
to
a
the
pain in the
register.
ass.
Yeah.
Yeah, this solves that issue because it's like it's always against that surface. Um, I got that. Somebody's asking about that. Oh no, the yellow thing is just a thermometer. Um, So the one downside is that with silicone blankets is they get really really hot, and this is an 800 watt. I use 800 watt blankets, but they lose heat. I think very quickly too.
Mm.
So there's a lot of catch up. There's a lot of bending and then catching up heat. Um, and then if you're using the thermocouplers, they're reading. It's honestly these days I'm using my ear.
Mm.
Um, I bought like a thermal gun that I can like scan the temperature, and one temperature that's like my blankets sometimes read like 350. I'm like fuck, that's hot. Um, but
But
uh,
what's underneath is going to be,
yeah, it's totally different than what's happening underneath.
and
Um,
I've noticed that a lot too. When we're measuring surface temperature of our iron, even say if in bridge removal,
yeah,
you're sitting here, you think you're heating at 250 degrees. Meanwhile, the bridge is never coming off the guitar
never. Yeah,
because it's not 250 degrees underneath the bridge. It's only about say 70 or 80
totally,
degrees by the time you
totally.
count it.
So all these sensors are kind of inaccurate. And that's why I go on listening. Like as soon as I hear sizzling and I see steam, um, I'm just like, okay, you just go. And the beauty of having things so supported with all that weight is your range of error is far uh not what is the greater or lesser. Um, you can bend more efficiently with less temperature and less water. Um,
Are you adding more weight here or just shifting the weight?
yeah, so now I'm shifting the weight to the other side of the slat. So there's two
Oh, okay.
slats in
Right,
each
right,
slat.
right. Yeah. Hmm.
Um, if I could, I would add even more weight if I could. Um,
So now you're sticking a another piece of your mold into the registered holes.
yeah, exactly. Then the next call goes in. No, I'm not overbending. And the tolerance, I've been asked to like take this to market, and I've had other issues where, um, but it's such a custom tool, and it's built to like for this, it's built to my side specifications. So the thickness of my sides goes into the spacing that I make my calls because they overlap each other so that every point is completely supported. So you can't just make one thing for one person and it's going to be great for everybody else.
Yeah.
Um, um, Bo, you asked a question. Oh, about
Yeah.
overbending.
Bo wanted to know if your forms are overbent for spring,
No.
or
So
do
what
you
I
use a
do,
second
I
heating
u-
session?
yeah. So I used to let everything sit and cool on this, but because that makes this tool inoperable. Um, and since watching Ken Parker's side bending, he does the positive and negative molds. It's literally I stop the heat after the whole thing is bent up here. I wait 10 minutes and then pull it off and slide it into a positive negative mold where I run the heat back up for
Right.
and then just turn it off, and it comes back just absolutely perfect. I mean, when it comes off of here, it springs back, but it's still super pliable and you can just flip it into a mold. I mean, my cutaway is pretty sharp and it slides in there no issues.
Yeah,
I've I've
that is a pretty steep cutaway. I mean, that's
yeah, I've had issues. For instance, I've had weird wood that I have broken like the waist area. Coincidentally, I've never broken anything in the cutaway. It's always right there in the waist because I think I cut the heat back. See there you can see I'm cutting the heat back, and I shouldn't. I should just keep it going. Um, and I'm kind of hurrying to get the whole thing done. Um, but if it's not like a full break, if you put it into your mold, into your positive negative mold, and reheat it and cool it and let it, I've had wood come back where I can't even find the crack. Like I can't even open the crack up because the the wood has fused. It's in a weird way. I don't know the science of wood, but it's like fused itself back together.
Yeah.
Um, so the positive negative mold has been a huge thing for me, thanks to seeing Ken Parker do that. And also your sides don't buckle. They just come out perfect.
Now you're spinning it the other way.
Yep. And I have a like a friction washer knob on the rear side, which I should transfer it to the front because it's kind of a nuisance sometimes. But that allows me to, it can spin, but it won't overspin with the weight.
Yeah.
It's like rides on a nylon friction washer. Um, so the weights were, for a while I was hanging a cinder block on the bottom.
Right.
Um, but I made this tool for this cello maker, Will Wedby, who saw this and reached out to me to make him a C-bout bender
Mhm.
because of his arthritis. And he's the one who told me about the slash window weights. Um, and I was like, Will, you're you're a genius. Thank you. Because they're heavy, they're slim, and they're not cumbersome.
I think my computer may have
Um,
hung up
and
on.
I use for the I have another setup where I do the non cutaway, doing the same thing. And I actually use my 16-inch. I used to have two versions of 16 and a 17-inch like calls,
Mhm.
and I'm using my 16-inch for everything because as long as I can, it's pre-bent and springy. I can throw it back into either mold and recook it and clamp it, cool it, um, and just comes out perfect. So at no point was like a slat or the wood was unsupported. It
Right.
was always under 40 pounds of pressure. So ideally, like I want to redo this tool in metal and get rid of my silicone blankets.
Right.
Um, like that's really the next upgrade.
But just the ingenuity and in again bringing up that that word that keeps coming to mind for me is a theme for the whole thing of just discovery. It was, it's the fox bender is, what everybody uses. Everybody has uses some version of that since, he introduced it in the 60s,
Yeah,
Mhm. And it's either that or it's bending over a pipe, burning yourself in, ungodly ways.
yeah.
Um,
But that's
and
like that's yeah. I mean, I think it's like you said it though, and it was a curiosity. It was like um, it wasn't to like develop a new product or anything. It was like this is a cool idea and I think it'll work. Like
mhm,
let's see.
yeah. So that's that. I'm going to stop sharing because I think that's the end of the box. The gravity bender. You did make it one of these for somebody else. It looks like.
Yeah, so Will Wedby is a Chicago violin cello maker. Michael Darnton worked with Will for a long time. Um, and Will reached out to me and said that he was having a hard time bending the two sharp uh, curves of the C-bouts.
That's in
Um,
there.
yeah, and oh my god, I was just so thrilled when he called me. And like I was like, oh my god, like this, we can do this. And he because he's like, without this, I can't build cellos anymore.
Hmm.
Um, and so I thought about it. I was drawing some ideas. I stopped working. I was like, I'm gonna. This took precedent over what I was doing in the shop. So, and I think I took a month designing and building this. Um, it, and it totally worked. Um,
And so this is your gravity bender for cellos.
yeah, exactly. And like all this stuff, like, I mean, I couldn't do this without a computer. Like this all, I think the ability to think in 3D has made me. I think changing your perspectives is like the biggest thing, at least for me. Like thinking in different ways, and that's how people have, like my mentors have taught me, is like how do you change your perspective in a different way.
Right,
Um, and I think the computer is definitely one way to do that.
right.
And it's like easy, but you can. I shouldn't say that. It's not easy.
So, and like I said, this whole period of time you're going through your career all the way up until now, and it's this path of discovery, the path of discovery that is not only causing you to constantly reevaluate what is an archtop guitar, but as also bring in all of those experiences you had working in a violin shop. We you were on a panel talking about neck joints with Michael Bashkin last month, I think. Um, and even then, you see a lot of that influence being drawn into your world, causing you to reevaluate almost every part of the guitar, and not just being satisfied with having a tight-fitting dovetail. That you and even though you're designing things in CAD, you're not letting a CNC machine do the work for you. You still pick up a chisel and a
I,
pen.
I remember learning CAD and going to Michael, like, and telling Michael and showing him what I was doing, and we both agreed that like if Strad were alive in today's world, that he would just be a CAD monkey,
Right.
because like obsessed with perfect geometry and like perfect solutions of form.
Sure.
Um, you know, uh, yeah. I mean, the CNC, like to be able to sit here and be like, I have this idea for a tool, and to go sit down and figure out a way to make it and like make it in less than a day is one of the most powerful tools in my workshop.
Sure.
I use it to definitely hog out my tops and backs.
Right.
Um, I mean, anything that I see where what's the word I'm looking for? Um, form that repeats itself in a way that you want,
Hmm.
um, is is beautiful for a machine like that. Um, I always want an instrument for me. Like a great instrument is where I can see like the human behind it.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's like on the pedestal for me. Like it's if I can't see the human hand be it behind it, like I feel like I don't get invested in it as much because it's more interesting to me that way.
Sure. Before we do, because we're also going to do a little shop tour, which it's always fun to poke around the shop. But this also, when I saw this, the first time I saw this, um, this was after my own heart. Um,
That was a save the back tool right there.
yeah, this is
Yeah.
this is incredible. Um, so this was just a way for you to sand your sides,
Yeah, I mean, previous to that, I would be putting the guitar up with my belly against my bench.
or sitting on the floor, Indian style, with the guitar
Oh,
between your
yeah.
legs.
Yeah, I mean, it's just horror. Yeah. And now I do, I mean, this is like my Doug Proper workstation.
Exactly. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
this is this is the wooden version of the workstation. When I saw
Yeah.
this, I said, "Oh, okay, I'm not crazy."
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. I mean, honestly, I've even turned it horizontal,
Yes.
flat,
Yep.
and used it to stabilize my neck. It holds the
How
guitar
how
in
long
the
how
same
long
way.
ago did you come up with this? When did this? Uh,
Oh, I don't remember. Maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know. Um, yeah, I mean, it's really the same thing. It
Yeah.
allows me to rotate the guitar in any position. I'm
Hmm.
doing these inlays. There's a picture of me inlaying this medallion saddle that I do,
Sure.
um, which was always a pain in the ass before,
Mhm.
and now it just puts it in a perfect spot, and
Yes.
you can
And
shine
Jeff,
light on it in any direction.
yeah.
Um,
And Jeff will be very pleased that we're seeing a total vice stand and a
this tool that I made is like the one thing that keeps me from buying your workstation, because I'm so like I've loaded it into the cart so many times.
right.
I just haven't uh, I haven't done it, but yeah.
But yeah, but seeing this, being able to have you be able to manipulate a guitar in that many ways, with a neck, without a neck.
Yeah, in playing whatever, like
Yeah.
it spins completely around.
Hmm.
And then I have different calls to hold it. So I have calls that hold it at the waist, call to hold it in the cutaway,
Yep.
two calls that hold it at the lower bout. That was me stripping an instrument.
Hmm.
And it's so solid. I mean, you could put all your weight into a scraper, and
Sure. So here you have the arm, and then your center axis is here, and here you're in essence your saddle holding on to wherever you're going to adjust
yeah,
or whatever
yeah,
size of the guitar. These will move in and out depending on where on the guitar you need to grab it.
exactly.
And
And
then,
my buddy Alex, he's like, it needs a pin,
hmm,
like, and I didn't think of that, and yeah, the pin is totally necessary. That's like your positive stop.
they're right here.
Hmm.
I think it's the last picture there. Yeah. But yeah, so when when I saw that the side bender, you're not just thinking about the guitar as an object that begs experimentation, but you're also, not satisfied with just how you were bending sides, you know.
I'm trying to. Uh, I don't want to say make everything easier.
Well,
Things,
but that's kind of the point.
yeah, that is the point, though, right? It's
Yeah,
like more enjoyable because at the end of the day, like bending wood and building a guitar seems to always be problem solving
sure.
in like a wrestling match because
Mhm.
wood is always different. And I feel like whatever you can gain control of as a constant is, I don't know. Maybe it's all like the Taylor factory videos I watched as a kid. I don't know.
So,
And you're like,
yeah, you did all of those seeing all of the automation in the factory. Um, so what I'm going to do now is let me see if I can pull me down and just put you up. There we go. So you're going to spin your camera around for us, and we're going to go a little walkabout around your shop.
sure, let me take this off the stand. Um, so that's my front door.
Okay. So now
Yeah.
you're in California. How long have you been you've been in California? Because you were born and raised in Chicago, right?
Yeah. We moved out here in 2013. So
Okay, so
12 years.
you've been out there for a good 12 years or so.
Yeah. So this is we did an addition off of the garage.
Yes.
So, right. Um, and this space wasn't here. This was just a yard.
Okay.
Um, so when we moved here, um, I had inheritance, and I was like, well, if we're gonna move to LA, like I'm gonna build my shop right.
Hmm.
So I was able to like spec out like really nice things that I'm super grateful for. The AC came in a year or two ago, which I'm super grateful now for.
Yeah, right.
um, but I'm still using like this is stuff I still use and use for Michael. Um,
Mhm.
Hand grinders and it's my sharpening station. These are amazing grinders. There's these
So
old German.
you're sharpening by hand?
Yep. Yeah,
Oh,
and for a while I was using aluminum oxide wheels.
right.
And this is a new wheel. It's called a CBN wheel. It's like cubic boron nitride or something like that. It grinds cold and it never changes shape. So it's always
Wow.
perfectly flat. Um, it's a game changer. Yeah. Um, yeah. So that's my, I don't have Jimmy D'Acquisto's workbench, but I made these benches. Um, here's that old coffee guitar that I made in at Columbia.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
I
what
brought out to
that's
show
all
you
the
this
great.
this guy, but you
Sure.
already showed that, so that's cool. I do most of like my setup stuff there.
Okay.
Um, Working in the violin, most of all my tools fit here. Um,
So you're
I
What's the baseball glove for?
I'm uh, my son's baseball coach. I ran home from the game to do the interview. I've always worked on an island or like a peninsula.
hmm
Um, so that's kind of like the main
This
thing
is
for
your
me.
assembly bench, and you got a carving deck up on the total wise pedestal there, I see.
Yeah, I mean that was like a no-brainer,
Yeah,
right?
just to have it spin. Sure.
Yeah, these cradles um, were, from the geometry of my tops and backs.
Sure.
I've put in these. I used to fit my braces in a ring, like a clamped ring that would simulate rim tension.
Yeah.
But now I do everything in my cradle, um, and I've built in these adjustable cork risers. If you can see, they have these relating holes in here.
Oh, yeah.
Put in
Okay.
the key here, and they're adjustable. So
Oh,
when
look
you're
at that.
fit, when you're
Okay.
fitting a top, you can you can support the top. So everything happens here. This is a little chair adjustable uh, leg. It comes
So
out.
all of those pieces are adjustable by threading them to push them higher or bring them lower with an Allen wrench from underneath.
Yeah, and they're on a.
They're
These
on
were
a pedal.
overpriced McMaster car swiveling nuts.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I have one here, and then I have another one here,
Yeah.
and I put this ring in here actually, so that I don't have to adjust the height. It always stays
Sure.
at the perfect height.
Yeah.
Um,
And here's where you do
some
most of your assembly.
Yeah. Some more cool CNC stuff is that like if I'm doing different thickness rims,
hmm
um, I have these. Let's see if I can do this one-handed without breaking anything. These are just like inserts
Yeah.
that have the same pins, right?
hmm
So it interlocks with my molds.
Oh, so
So
if you got like if you got a small, 2 inch or 1 5/8 body or
yeah,
1 5/8 body, or you're going to go up to a full 3 inch body, you can just use inserts for the same mold.
exactly. And then I realized I could put in these clamp channels
Hmm.
to clamp in my linings.
Sure.
Um, let's see what else. Wood,
You got all your wood there.
yeah, some old cello wood. Uh, so spray room is here.
Okay.
This used to all be open, but then I was like, no, it needs to be closed off. Um, and So in here, this is a, if I can, I don't know if I can back up on this view. This cabinet rolls out of the way, and the fan and filter wall is behind there.
Okay.
So this rolls out and comes out. But this is a UV cabinet.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Are you doing a lot of UV finishing?
I'm using it for color.
Oh, okay.
And sometimes drying oils, but never, not no UV cured finishes. Real well, I guess what an oil varnish is. Some of them are UV cured finishes.
Right.
Um, then in here is kind of like the tool room.
Yeah.
Um, there's the bender.
That's where the bender lives. Okay.
Um, it's a CNC.
Yeah. You get your
Yeah,
dusting.
but most all the these are all tools I brought from Chicago. They're all pretty, they're not crazy industrial machines. They're all pretty lightweight machines.
Right.
Uh, um,
Oh, you're freezing up a little bit.
yeah, got a nice Inca joiner. Oh, sorry. I'll head
That's
back. You there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah, and I got wood kind of in every corner.
Can you peek back in that room?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you just got a little bit too far away from your Wi-Fi. Yeah, so you got everything you need fairly well organized.
He doesn't have a name yet, but he's got eyes. You know what's funny is the eyes are amazing indicators of vibration,
Hmm.
which was I put them on there with my son, but I actually used them. It's pretty funny. Um, yeah, that's kind of it. Sander with the foot pedal. It's really helpful.
Right.
Yeah.
So in there, you're pretty much using it for mostly for jigging and fixturing, and then for hogging off, using the
Yeah.
CNC to hog off most of the material before you sit down and carve.
Yeah. I mean, I try to keep this room as dust free as I can, but that's still really hard to do.
Sure.
Um, and when you're carving plates and there's dust everywhere.
Hmm. Yeah,
But
it's
the spray room is nice because there's also a skylight in there, so I can really control the flow of air.
sure.
That was one of the benefits of like designing a shop and having good electricity and power. The only thing I don't have is plumbing, which really blows. Um, and but I have a garden grass irrigation right outside, so I'm thinking about just running a cold water line and a sink just to have a sink in here.
Um, I think Bo just asked, how long are you UVing the raw wood to color?
It depends on what kind of treatment I'm doing, because sometimes, depending on what I what application I do, sometimes it's really fast, sometimes it's slow.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm using it on finished instruments. It's never really on raw wood. Um, so these days, I'm not using it as much because I'm working on something that does the same thing but without UV.
Hmm.
That I've kind of been working on with Michael a little bit.
Okay.
Uh, but
So, does anybody have any other questions for Danny about anything before we, uh, because I've got a couple of questions to wrap things up, but I don't want to monopolize things.
want to talk
Um,
about you want to talk about childcare and parental. Uh,
and soccer.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, somebody asked, Oh, sorry, no, it was that was from before. So looking ahead, what's because you're now I guess where you're coming in on what was it?
You asking how old I am?
You can know well you're coming in on you're rounding about probably about 25 years, maybe 28 years from the from where we started this journey discussing this today, from your first guitar to where you are now.
Yeah.
And it's been, like I said, it's been to me, I, the only word that keeps leaping to mind for me is this journey of discovery. And so where from here on out, where do you see things going? You know, for cane top guitars. You know, is this like
Yeah.
what's the evolution of where this goes from here? Is this just, keep,
I mean, that's an awesome question. And that's a question like, I think about all the time. Um, I think it's letting my instruments be more me and not
Mhm,
not not ruled by anything else except the person I'm working with, because the people I work with have a lot to do with pushing me in certain directions, which I love. Um, they make me do things that I never would have done on my own. But that being said, I feel like I'm making changes, but the changes that I make are very subtle,
mm,
and I feel like I want to keep doing that because there's so many things, and um, there are things that I see going in the right direction,
mhm,
um, and I just want to keep going in that direction. I want to give the instruments the time that they deserve. I always so for me, it's like, what can I do better at as a guitar maker and be better at? And for me, it's like uh, less pressure and
mhm,
more right
yeah,
to enjoy it. Like I never want to not enjoy doing this. Um, and for me, that's always in my head, because there's so many moments where you're filled with anxiety for something not working. And when I look back, those are all huge growing experiences where I've had panic attacks because of, I turned a guitar black by accident. And at the time I was freaking out, but those were huge learning situations where I gained knowledge from it. And going forward, I just want to be more open with what I'm doing and let the materials speak and not be rushed. And I'm kind of grateful for all that. So kind of keep going on the same course. Um,
yeah.
and yeah, that's what I want to be doing.
Right. I also want to ask you another question as it relates to Archtop guitars, and I apologize because I didn't prepare you for this one, and I don't mean it's not a question to try to stump you with. It's a
Okay.
question I've asked other Archtop guitar builders. Um, but you may have a different perspective to the answer.
Okay.
And I come from this as an Archtop player, so um, when I've asked this to different archtop builders, there are some that just kind of give me a blank stare and say, I don't know the answer to your question because I've never built anything but an archtop guitar. But
Mhm.
you've got a wide experience of both, not only having built, you have your what you're affectionately calling your cane caster, which is
Yeah.
your entree into a solid body electric guitar world, or a sort of solid body electric guitar, um, patterned after loosely after a Telecaster. And
Mhm.
you've also made flat top guitars. You've also made gypsy style guitars. Um, and as a lot of young guitar builders in your career, you kind of made anything anybody asked for, because there's somebody there standing there with a check saying, "I want to give you money." Um, but you've also taken this I don't want to call it a detour because it's not, but you've taken this uh, journey into the world of violins, which some people look at it as the symbiotic world to the archtop guitars, the archtop guitar. Others don't. Others look at almost a mandolin as the rightful cousin to the
Sure.
archtop guitar. Um,
Yeah.
but f- the question is that I'm getting to taking too long to get to is what is it that's different about an archtop guitar than the world of flat top guitars or the world of even electric guitars?
I
What?
mean, I feel like I think one could probably write a book on that, right?
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's almost
Uh,
too big a subject to ask. But in
yeah,
your mind, what are the things that leap to mind?
the instruments that are coming out now, from all these amazing makers. Um, the Archtop has become such a versatile voice. Um, when it's right, um, I think there's a lot in common too. Um, I think there's a lot in common with all of the instruments that you said. And for one, it's like when it's great and at its peak, like it's like an experience.
Hmm.
Going back to like an emotional instrument, right? Like great electric guitars can have the same kind of feeling and experience, right?
Hmm.
Classical guitars, archtop guitars, flat top guitars. Um, the things that are different, it's just a different system. So the way that it puts sound out there is totally different. And, you could talk about how that is scientifically in the waveforms. In my ears, like the archtop, when it's done right, it throws a more specific sound that's more organized. I think the structure of the archtop guitar, when it's um,
Well, structurally, it's a
well, when it's
different.
when it's right, I feel like sometimes like a lot of past archtops, they tend to have like a home voice. Um, like they're very happy doing one thing and they do it really, really well, and they've made music history doing that.
Hmm.
Um, and I feel like those instruments tend to be like really zoned in on um, like they're happy in D, or right. They're like, um, but when you listen to like the spectrum of sound, I feel like you hear the cascade. Things hang in the air. The physicality of it, I feel like, is very inviting, like humanistically, um, because sometimes they play almost like, even though they're might be the most acoustic instrument you're experiencing, they might play like an electric guitar.
Hmm.
Um, and that's an interesting thing as well. But in the end, it's like all the instruments, if they're successful, like it's because the system is successful and everything is important. And that's maybe one of the backbones I've learned about working on violins and in the string world, is like every single thing you do is important and affects the overall tone.
Right.
Um, and um, I don't know. Great instruments to me. I'm not much of a surfer. I live here and I want to get out there more. But great classical guitars to me, like they always feel like they're gonna explode, but they never do.
Hmm.
Like that is kind of like a running thing. Like they make the walls vibrate and they make you feel it, and they're really easy to forget. Like and when you experience them, um, you kind of lose yourself. You. Uh, all these things that I'm bringing up are like these are like inspirations and things that I want my instruments, whether I'm making an electric guitar or an archtop,
Hmm.
like that's kind of what I want out of them as a goal from like as a player.
Right.
And then once I make them, I'm like, get them the hell out of here. I don't. Like I want to move on to the next thing and
Are you are
interesting
you are you one
way.
of those builders that halfway through or three-quarters of the way through or seven-eighths of the way through a current build, are you struggling to keep yourself from thinking about the next guitar while this one's getting done?
No, no,
No?
because the way that I work is like everything kind of comes together, and then like I always like visually, like I think about the project as this ginormous target,
Mm.
and everything is coming together, coming together, coming together to a focus. And then the hardest part is deciding like when it's done, right? Like when have I scraped it enough to move into varnishing? It's always varnishing that I'm like, okay, like let's get this shit over with. But I have
By
friends.
the time you're putting a finish on the guitar, you just want it gone.
Yeah, yeah, and then there's other people in the business that are like the motto is like always be varnishing, because
Right,
that means you're like always, you're always moving through. Um, but the one thing that I'm learning more now in the last couple of years is varnishing and being more comfortable and figuring out things that I've never done before, and that does fill you with anxiety,
right,
because a lot of times you're testing something on a finished instrument and you want to test safely, but sometimes you got to take big risks to get certain rewards.
right,
Um, and so it's like, how do you swim in those waters a little bit?
right,
Um, and a lot of people won't tell you what they're doing, right? Like you can ask questions. And again, the violin world is totally different. Like I'm not varnishing, I'm kind of varnishing like a violin maker, but I'm still making an Archtop guitar that's, I think those are harder waters. And I agree, like with those people, like the guitar and the Archtop guitar is not a violin. Um, and that's something that I
or
continue.
will it be handled like a violin?
Yeah, but at
Yeah.
the same time, like, I mean, people walk down the streets holding $1 million violin and you'd never know it. Um, and they're not afraid, like the varnish is peeling off and their sweat is going through the original varnish, whatever. And like that's the shit.
Right,
Um, and that's how I want my instruments to be perceived, as opposed to like um, being afraid to play.
right,
And a lot of that I think is in my control. It's just how I deliver an instrument and present it.
right. And well, I mean, it is at the end of the day, it's a tool with which to make music,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And the more emotional it is, it's like the more it's right, right?
Right, exactly. Sure.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
mean, there's a thought always comes to me when I hear like a really, really amazing singer, who has like this deep, deep voice that gives you goosebumps. You're like, man, like I want to make an instrument that does that. Like that. And then it's like there's so many different voices. So going forward, it's just like I want to just have more experience making different instruments, because they're all different, even if they're patterned after the same outline or I use the same arches. Like the wood really change. Like it's really the subtle, subtle things that make a huge impact in the end. And to be able to hear those subtle differences, I think is glorious, because then it means like you're understanding it like or you're, you know, I don't know. I diverse.
no, that's fine. That's it, and that's a great place, I think, to land because that's part of the whole discovery thing. That's part of the whole, the whole kind of theme, like I said, and that's the. I hate to keep coming back to that, but it's what keeps coming to mind for me as I've gotten to know you better. Um, Danny,
Thanks, Doug.
I can't thank you enough for spending the time with us to do this. I think it's
No, thank you, man. Thank you. You just gave me goosebumps. So thank you.
well. So if everybody could unmute and join me in thanking Danny Koentopp for joining us this afternoon and giving us the time, I would appreciate that as well. Thank you, Danny.
Thank
Thanks
you,
so much,
guys.
Dan. That was fabulous.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, guys.